Before we get started, let's be sure everyone is able to select their language channel. The options available for this session are English, Spanish, or original audio if you would like to hear the audio without interpretation. For people connecting through a computer, you can choose your language channel by clicking on the interpretation icon to the bottom left that looks like a globe. For people connecting with a mobile device, you can choose your language channel by selecting the More option, then Interpretation, then selecting your language from the available options. We extend much gratitude to our interpreters today. We also have live captioning available that can be accessed by clicking on the multimedia viewer box on the right of your screen. I would now like to welcome you to the DVAM webinar, Honoring Survivors and Advocates, Centering Life's Experiences to Create Systemic Change. My name is Carla Legria. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the project manager with the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. This webinar will be moderated by Cathy Cave. Now for some troubleshooting tips about this platform. If you get disconnected from today's session, at any point, please re-enter the session using the original webinar link that was emailed to you. If the sound is unclear, it is likely due to an unstable internet connection. If this happens to you, feel free to call in for better audio connection. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, you can directly chat with me for assistance. And if you're unable to contact me, please reach out to the WebEx tech support. I will post the number in the chat box. We welcome you to use the chat feature to share thoughts, questions, and resources throughout the session. Your screen may look a little different depending on what kind of device you're using. Usually the chat box can be found at the bottom right of the screen. You may have to click on the chat icon that looks like a speech bubble to open it. Let's test that chat feature now. Please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from today. Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. I will now hand it over to Cathy.
Thank you so much, Carla. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cathy Cave. I'm the Senior Training Consultant with the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. And I notice that folks are still adding to the chat. Thank you so much for that. If at any time during the next hour you have comments or you want to share an experience or you have a question for any of our panelists, please use the chat to share information. That would be wonderful. And Carla is going to support us by keeping an eye on the chat so that we can stay on top of the information that's coming in and questions that you all might want answered. In our preparation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we wanted to spend some time honoring advocates, honoring survivors, and also paying attention to that many of us who are advocates, our journey started out of our life experience. So our experiences of survival, our experiences with pain and violence, our experiences of community connectedness, and just recognizing how important all of those spaces are. And in so many places in our history and in our work lives, folks are often, concerned about, I can't talk about my history. I can't share my story. I can't share my journey. And we like to turn that right on its head. I remember a job that I had working for the state of New York, and my very first day of work, several people who were in more administrative roles in mentoring me said, make sure you don't talk about your history, just talk about your job. And that just didn't make sense to me. And so I've been fortunate in that my work and my journey doing trauma work really started from a place of talking with survivors of all ages about this is the journey. This was the journey of trauma and how that translated into and life as an advocate and transform the way that I actually provide advocacy around education and experience and all of those things. So in that light, we wanted to celebrate survivors and advocates as part of our panel today. And so I'm going to ask each of our panelists to please introduce themselves. And first we'll start with Tiara and share us a little bit about who you are and where you're from. And then we will go to Maria and then to Acela.
So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Tiara Springer Love, pronouns she, her. I am originally from Queens, New York. I currently live in Albany, where I am the Director of Youth Power here at Families Together in New York State. And a part of my lived experience as a peer is navigating the child welfare system as well as the mental health system as a young person and as a young adult. So thank you for having me, Kathy.
Thank you for coming, and we'll come back to you in a moment. Maria, can we hear from you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Ceballos. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm a legal advocate at Enlace Comunitario, which is located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Enlace Comunitario is a social justice organization that provides services to people who have experienced domestic violence. And we specialize in working with the Latino immigrant survivors and their children. We provide direct intervention services to clients as well as prevention services throughout our community. I've worked at Enlace for about 14 years, and I've been fortunate enough to work in different positions such as case manager and housing specialist and now the legal department. And I have been witness to the transformation of many of the people that we work with. I am an immigrant and I'm a survivor. And working at Enlace has just inspired me to raise my voice and take a stand to end intimate partner violence. So I'm honored to be here with this panel, and I'm excited to tell you more about our programs and my experiences working with immigrant survivors.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Acela.
Hello, everyone. I'm so grateful you inviting me, because one of the first things that I always start is to help other people and to talk about it, because some communities, they're not really talking about what happened to them. And sometimes your story can help other people. So that's why I'm so glad. So my name is Isela Varela. I'm immigrant. I came from Mexico, I believe like 20 years ago. And now I'm doing community service for Enlace Comunitario here in Albuquerque.
Wonderful. So looking so much forward to hearing from everybody a little more about you and your experiences and what your thoughts are. I'm sure you'll give us some good takeaways for today. Again, my name is Cathy Cave. I'll be moderating, and I didn't share my pronouns are she, her, hers. And thank you for coming. So Tiara, I'm going to turn this back over to you and share a little bit about kind of what your journey's been and what you do in your advocacy. And I did one other, before we do that, I do apologize. We did have a fourth panelist who was supposed to join us. She lost her voice today. And so there will be our smaller but mighty group. And so go ahead, Tiara.
Thank you. So advocacy, the journey. So I want to say, so I've been doing this work since 2010, and Cathy Cave was one of the first trainers I ever met. And it's been a journey, and that's what I would say, right? So I'll talk a little bit in like a timeline format, right? So I started this work when I was 18 years old, and it all started because of a suicide attempt, right? So it started because of a suicide attempt at 14 years old. And I come from a community where that was unheard of, right? Like mental illness was something we didn't talk about. I am Black. I am a cisgendered woman. My family pretty much comes from the South. I was adopted, and out of the 5 of my siblings, I was the last sibling, and that was an interesting journey in itself. So being a 14-year-old and trying to navigate those emotions and living with a family that didn't understand or could relate I started to expose, or I started to have depressive symptoms. And where I come from, you just go to church, right? You just need a little bit of Jesus. You just go to church and we'll figure it out and we'll pray this sad feeling away. So I was still connected, and I'm still connected to my biological family, which just caused a lot of confusion for me. And I want to say my advocacy started there when I was able to start asking questions and figuring out what I was feeling and wanting to know more about it. So in that part of my journey between 14 to 17, I did go to treatment. It wasn't something that I actively participated in. So I was that young person that was considered non-compliant. I was that person that was considered non-engaging, or for therapy was not working for me. And I'm quoting these phrases because these were phrases that were used to describe me and my experience. So my adopted mom, she chose to put me into community supports and community services, right? So I was on like the tennis team, I was in this dance group. So as far as my journey, it was as if I had all this stuff going on internally, but it didn't matter because I was on the tennis team, right? So at 18, I decided to go into treatment on my own, right? Because I knew something was not right. Right. So, like, the suicidal ideation continued. My questions that I had were not being answered. No one was exploring with me what was happening to me and what I was experiencing. Everyone's question was, what's wrong with you, as opposed to what's happening to you and or with you, and what supports can we offer. And I went to therapy on my own, and I was on my own health insurance at the time. And that was where I could say I really found my voice, and I really found what it meant to speak up for myself and get answers. So, as far as the timeline, so that's at like 18. I discovered a youth peer advocate position out in Queens, and I applied for it after volunteering with them during the summer for a summer camp, and I would get a stipend through the summer program. And I was just a camp counselor. And I really enjoyed doing the work at that particular program. I loved how they engaged with the families. I love how they engaged with the young people. Most of the youth had mental health diagnoses, and I just saw myself in those young people, right? Like, I saw parents trying to get their children into community programs. There are parents who did not want their children to go to therapy, take medications, and I connected to that. So we had family peer advocates that worked at the program, and I would talk to them, and I learned more about the child welfare system. I learned more about how to find my biological family, certain family members, and I learned about just a lot of things I did not know that were answers to some of my questions that I had as a young person. And I applied for the job. They said you had to have lived experience. And in my household, what happens at home stays at home, right? So not just you don't talk about this stuff in the workplace, it just doesn't leave home, right? So I had never shared with anyone I was adopted. I had never shared with anyone that I had been in therapy or treatment at all. And I finally disclosed, and I interviewed for the job, and I got the job, right? So I got this youth advocate job, and I had no idea what I was doing, right? But I knew I had a story, and I knew that representation mattered, because of just how I felt about the young people and knowing that I didn't have a youth peer advocate when I was navigating systems. I didn't have someone that could say, well, I get it. Because the first thing a young person would say to me is, you have no idea. You don't get it. You go to school, or you have a car, or you have these things. And once I would open up my mouth, youth would say, like, oh my God, she does get it. When I would share pieces of my experience. The advocacy journey when working with family peer advocates was not easy at all, because the part that was a challenge for me was getting my coworkers to see me as a young professional and as a young advocate. So even though I was going through my own journey and going through my own stuff, going through my own therapy, and also trying to figure out how I wanted to define myself as a young professional, also a student, it was interesting to have family peer advocates who thought and also were confident that they knew more than me. And they used to tell me I didn't know what I was talking about. They did not empower me or try to create a space where I could be empowered or exercise this confidence that I had developed in this summer program as I started asking questions. So, one thing about advocacy for me and my identity, being a young person, is really important. And as I've walked into spaces, sometimes I'm the only young person in the room speaking to the needs of young people, right? So often when I work with programs that do work with child welfare, it's all about the parent. What are we doing for the families? What are we doing for the families? When in all actuality, they mean parent. And it's like, but what about the young person? Right? So sometimes, yeah, we go into spaces and it's about young people, but I find my role as an advocate to make sure that the youth voice is amplified and not overshadowed by the parents' goals, wants, or desires. Yes, parents need peer support as well, and that's another track, right, of family peer advocates and parent to parent support, but also where's the support for the young people? And those are the questions that I was asking myself based on my own lived experience. And that was a challenge for me, right? So coming from a place of I've already been shut down at home, navigating the space of advocacy and being able to figure out how to articulate certain verbiage and words, and pretty much not feeling intimidated. Because sometimes I would walk into rooms with people who have direct influence on policy, they have direct influence on things that happen about my life as a young person, but young people aren't at the table. So all the time we say nothing about us without us. So those were where I found some of my struggles. But as I learned to advocate for young people, as an advocate, I also learned how to advocate for myself in the workplace and also outside of the workplace. So as an advocate, I would say some of my successes is figuring out what recovery meant for me, right? For me, it meant finding purpose. It meant being able to be self-aware and see myself living for another day. Because there was a time where I couldn't see myself alive, right? So I just celebrated a birthday and I'm just like, emotional the fact that I'm still here, right? Like I thought I would have killed myself a long time ago. And I'm glad that I have support who have been able to help me as a professional, help me as an advocate, help me as a young person, and being able to create spaces where other young people can now not just find their voice, but use their voice and use their voice as a driving force to make change happen, whether that's in their immediate community or whether that's on a macro level. Because here at Youth Power, that's what we do. We train young people about knowing what's going on in policy and teaching them about leadership development and how do you strategically share your story, because sometimes there are pieces of yourself, and all the time there are pieces of yourself that aren't meant for everyone, right? And those were all things that I had to learn and skills that helped me become a better advocate. And I would have never thought that I'd be a director of a statewide youth network teaching young people how to be advocates for themselves and within their community. So that's like in a nutshell my journey about like how I started youth advocacy, kind of a little bit of the middle, and where I'm at right now.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to start our conversation today with your experience because there are connections, right? There are connections when we have advocates who work in mental health, advocates who work in substance use recovery, and advocates who work in domestic violence. There are very many similarities in terms of the journeys, the experience, the overlap. Often we're having the same conversations because there are these connections between intimate partner violence and the ways we cope and the systems that we engage with. And one of the things we talk about at the National Center is that when we talk about what it means to be trauma informed, we're holding all the things that we know about domestic and sexual violence. We're also holding this historical context of collective and historical trauma and genocide and the legacies of that. We're also holding human rights and social justice. And while we're thinking about all of those things and how do we kind of show up in partnership, we recognize that every survivor has a right to lead. And anything that we're doing with people is because it's what they would like to do for themselves. And so it's partnering, it's in that journey, and the overlaps are so clear. And thank you for sharing your experiences. And again, I'm really appreciating something that is another parallel in our work, right? Is that when you speak about being seen as a professional and with your skills and talents and the role that you have, and how important it is to get supported for all of those pieces. So I'm more than my story. Yes, my story is urgent and genuine and authentic, but I'm also more than my story. And how do we keep young people at the table? And one last piece around this is that we have been working very hard over the last few years to introduce the ideas that are central to peer support that have been part of the work within the mental health system for a long time now, to bring peer support in a more integrated way into domestic and sexual violence services and support. So making peer support part of our advocacy. And so just in the last few weeks, I've had several conversations with programs that are trying to figure that out. So your message around nothing about us without us and how important it is to kind of lay all that out and to talk about it and to think about who's represented in the work that we do. And so we always want to center survivors in our work. And one of the things we talk about when survivors are parenting or caretakers of young children is that we need to keep the youth's needs in mind and the parents' needs in mind at the same time. So thank you for all of that. All right, we are going to turn now to Maria, and would just love to hear more about your experience in this very culturally specific program that is in Lassie. So go ahead, let's share.
Thank you, Kathy. And I will start by telling you, by sharing more about the information of the programs that we provided in Enlace and how Enlace was created. Well, Enlace was funded in the year of 2000 by Claudia Medina, who is a wonderful leader in our community in New Mexico. And back then, she was a facilitator in a community, in an educational class through the University of New Mexico. And one of her participants disclosed that she was going through domestic violence by her spouse. And Claudia was looking for programs and services for her, but she couldn't find anything available for Spanish speakers or culturally specific for the Latino community. Unfortunately, during this time, the woman was murdered by her spouse. So I think Claudia started looking for funding to create the program. She started with 3 people, and I know that now after 22 years, we're close to 30 employees, and we provide services in 2 different departments. We provide intervention and prevention services. Our intervention services are directly to the survivor. We offer crisis intervention, case management, transitional housing, individual and group services, legal services in the areas of domestic violence and family law. We do financial educational classes and referral to other partner organizations in case we don't provide services at Enlace. We can connect them with appropriate resource outside of Enlace. Our prevention department, and this is very connected to one of our presenters, it's the outreach and the education in the community. Our two leadership development programs constitute of the promotoras and the youth leaders, which are former clients and the children in between 12 and 17-year-olds that get they have received services, they have completed their goals, and they get trained for several weeks to become community educators. So after their training, they present in different types of events, informational tables, fairs, schools, anywhere we get invited that we can share information about different topics, such as how domestic violence affects the family, the children, red flags in our relationship. There's also courses that are presented by the prevention department, and those are offered to anyone in the community that are interested in participating in the programs. And we also have this program called Voces Unidas, which is a support group that is facilitated by our promotoras, and which when they share information and educate our community on topics such as, like I was sharing, domestic violence, self-care, self-esteem. And I'll tell you that working in this field has enriched me and has, just empowered me to take a stand, as I said, to end, gender inequality and intimate partner violence. I immigrated to this country 25 years ago, and I know that when I first arrived here, I had no idea about how the legal system worked, how any in the school, how it worked, and just remembering the people that were there for me, just made a huge difference in my life. When I was going to college, I was offered to volunteer one of the programs that was offering legal assistance to just people that didn't have attorneys, that couldn't afford to get legal advice. And I was volunteering translating. I was barely learning English, but I was able to participate as an interpreter for the people that were coming to this program. And I noticed like how much need there was, first for the immigrant community, how much need, how many limited resources were available. And I was just more interested in like being a part of helping our community. I knew about Enlace, and it just, when I started learning more about the programs, I was just very interested on being a part of Enlace. I applied, and I was fortunate to, get a job there. During this time, I was going through some domestic violence with my former spouse, but I didn't realize that that's what it was, because I was raised on a mentality that women did have a role, and that's what we needed to do. And like I said, I didn't realize that that's what it was. But the more and more I was in the relationship, it just made me not feel myself, not being able to make decisions on myself or for my kids. I started getting more informed about programs and counseling and support for my family. So I feel like in both ways, I was advancing as an advocate. I was learning about resources, how to support survivors of domestic violence, and then supporting myself going through this journey as a survivor. Is about learning how to just overcome all the obstacles that I was facing. Every day that I work at Enlace, I see the transformation of the people that we work with. And I think that's what keeps me going. Promotoras are a great inspiration for me, because I see how they first come to Enlace, with so many questions and in crisis. And I want to be a part of like the support system that they have, and seeing them go through the process. And sometimes, it's not linear. It just goes up and down, and sometimes it stops, and then, we keep going. But I just knowing that we have the trust, and that we have the information for them to, be informed of their choices. For me, it is more than just a work. It's being part of this movement, and hoping that one day we won't have Enlace anymore. We will have another program, but not, we don't have to provide services to people who have been harmed by domestic violence. As Tiara shared, it's been a journey. It's I've learned so much from survivors. It's just to me, it's also part of my healing. Being a part of Enlace and being a part of my community, and just knowing that we can together, we're stronger, and that we can just find more resources and be a better support for anybody.
Thank you so much. I'm really appreciating everything that you're sharing, Maria, and especially your the pieces that kind of echoed some of what Tiara was saying around your own journey of self-discovery. It's like there's this supporting folks as an advocate, and then there's also what am I learning and applying to my own life and shifting and adapting like all the time. So I just really appreciated that openness. So we do have a request to slow down a little bit for the interpreters, and we will definitely have some time to come back for questions. And if folks have questions and you'd like to put them in the chat, that would be great. And then I'd like to turn this over to Sela. And if you could, share your experience and tell us a little more about the Promotoras program.
Thank you. Well, at first, when I started on Promotoras, it was 1.5 years ago. And really, it was the first time in my life that I really want something, not for me, because I've seen that transformation before in my family, taking those parenting classes and healthy relationships class also at Enlace. And so I was experiencing all of that with my family, and I see so many changes with them. And so I have a teenager girl at that time that's why I started getting these classes. And the only reason why I was looking for those classes is because I don't want to lose that connection that I have with my teenage girl, And so that's why I started learning more. But when they offered me to be a part of Promotora, it was like amazing for me to go out and return all the help that I get from Enlace. And so I was excited for the first moment. When they started telling me self-esteem, how to love myself first, how to put my family first, and all the happiness that I feel, I just go and express it out in our community. So they really empower me this much of trying to change our very violent community. And my first thought, it was like teenagers, instead of being at home, they should have more programs like this, for parents to help their families. And so I was excited to be part of that. And so they empowered me so much that when they asked me to facilitate these classes after that, it makes me so happy. And every time that I go to Enlace, it's like a second home. I feel that every time you go there, you speak to survivors, as I am a survivor of domestic violence. And it was so hard for me at first. And I never feel that I was able to get out of the bad situation. But after meeting with my case management, the first interview that I have at Enlace, she tells me that there's, help and I can be better. So I was pregnant at that time when I went looking for help at Enlace. And the reason why it was that I don't want my child to live that kind of terrible life. So I'm looking for help. They help me with legal management, with lawyers and everything. we started the process for divorce, and after 3 months, I feel strong. So I started with the process of divorcing, and after 1 year, I was free, and really, I wanted to have my child out of that situation, and so I did. I wish more people asking for help, because I don't think people they just feel the pain, but they don't have the guts to go out and say, I need help. I want everybody to know that there's help, either from an organization, maybe when you see your kids, you can feel that strong and go out and do that. So I'm doing facilitating for the healthy relationships now, and I'm also facilitating the supporting group for survivors, which makes me so proud of doing those things for our community. After Promotoras, I feel so empowered, and 59 years old now, and I'm going back to college. I wanted to learn more to help our community, not only with domestic violence, but many other things. I wanted to be a community health worker, and I wanted to keep working on myself, my family, my community, preventing any kind of violence, really, and educate and empower our community. I think is the best thing anyone can do to get ahead.
Thank you. Estella, can you share a little bit more about, so you talked about that you facilitate the healthy relationships. Are there community presentations that you all also do, or community education?
Yeah, we both, and it depends. Many programs like and we our focus is Latino communities. So anywhere that they're inviting us, we'll go, and we always empower people about how to really educate yourself first. Give them information about what is domestic violence, because like Maria said, all culture, it's very difficult to see the difference between what is good and what is not. For most of us, it's okay for your husband not to let you educate yourself. You can go out to work, but not really to educate or do more than come and cook, You don't really have that freedom. And so we do classes. These classes is one of the things. We go out to the community and talk about people to know all the things that you can do to educate yourself, to do the change in your own family, not really to helping and educating more people in our community, but to start with your family and the people that you know.
Thank you so much. And Maria, actually, I have a question for you. So in your journey, you talked a lot about kind of settling in the legal space, that felt really very important to you. Can you share a little bit more about what was important about that particular, and of all the things that you could be doing and have done it in Lassie, because you've done a lot of different things, this seems to be your sweet spot?
That's a good observation, Miss Kathy, because I agree. I think that when I first arrived to this country, I think I had a lot of questions around the legal system. I had a lot of limitations because I was undocumented at that time, and I didn't know like what was available or not. There were more, not a lot of resources back then. I think they have increased a little bit more, but I think that that's why I wanted to be more informed about, what were my rights, what was available to me, and what was available to the people like me. And I think that that's part of why now I want to be more educated about that area, so I can share that, because I feel like that was something that kept me limited and not only my personal life, but also, through work or maybe through, just socially, because I was afraid about, many, many things around me, but getting educated around that and being now a part of just being more informed, I can share this information with others that might be going through the same thing that I was going through years ago. So that might be why I do feel like I've been in that area, and I keep coming back to that because I did do housing and then I came back to the legal. But I think that might be, and because there is a lot of misinformation also shared, where they might say, if you call the police, this is going to happen to you, or they're connected with immigration services, for example, or you because of your status, you're not going to be heard in the courts or things like that. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation. So helping the community, being educated and sharing resources and information, makes me feel more a tool, an asset, to my community.
Thank you. And I think that Estella, when you were also talking about what you offer, the importance of recognizing what are the beliefs, the traditions, the values in our current community, and having people from that community to do this work with community members. And so that seems to be a really powerful approach that Enlace has taken. So I didn't know if you wanted to speak a little more about that. And then Tiara, I have a question for you.
I think working for and knowing where you're coming from and what everyone is going through, really, because whatever you do, all of our conversations connect. And so I feel that we need to educate more our community about that, and also parenting, because I feel in our community it's we have a very bad beliefs of how to raise kids. And violence, it can start in your own home if you don't have that education and how to show our kids with our own daily basic how to be safe in your own house, how to be loved in your own house. So, and how to respect them at their age, because most of us, we don't do that at home. We just go super tired. You don't have the time to connect with your kids. And I think every family should be and spend more time with their kids, even if you're in a rush, but you can have that time. Try to connect with your kids first and your family. Teach them more love and more respect so they can go out and do that too. Not only to the community, but it is better if you start at home. And I feel that if we all can make a difference starting with our families, it can be better.
Thank you so much. So Tiara, there was a comment in the chat that I wanted to come back to around engaging young people. And it was, having youth at the table is so important, but even more important is to give them space at the table to be engaged. So I wondered if that was something that you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit more to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the word that comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind is partnership, right? Like a lot of times we ask young people to come just to check off a box, right? Oh, we have a grant that says we have to have 20% community members at the table, or we have to have this particular population. And what happens is you get these young people at the table, but then no one's coaching them about, well, what does it even mean? Who built this table? What is this table for? What's the purpose? What's the goal? And what is your role as a young person to this collective of people, right? Like a lot of times, like current technical, like TA requests that I get, like technical assistance requests, are about that, just that. How do you get a young person to even be engaged at the table? How do you get them to understand what's going on? And it's like, first, we begin to stop using acronyms that no one knows what the acronyms mean. Or there's certain language or jargon that we use that's specific to this group of people when young people don't even know what certain things mean, right? So in New York City, it's ACS, but when you come to Albany, it's CPS when we talk about child welfare, right? Young people and everyone actually, but just speaking from the youth perspective, we want to feel like we're a part of something. We want to feel like we can contribute to something. We want to feel like we're not here just because someone told us to be here. We want to feel like we're here for more than just a $15 gift card to the supermarket, right? We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel as though you are listening to us and that you're going to actually take what we say into consideration. We want to feel as though our voices matter. And what will help us feel that our voices matter is when we get to see an outcome. We get to see change happen with our community because we said that that should happen, not because someone with a bunch of letters behind their name and a big fancy suit said so, but it's because we're doing this because the young person at the table asked for this and they asked for apples. So we're going to give them apples and not oranges, which I find often, right? We think it's great for young people to have Halloween parties. Halloween's coming up. We're going to do a Halloween party on the inpatient unit. But who said they wanted a Halloween party? How do you know the young people didn't want to just watch scary movies for the evening, right? Maybe they don't have money to buy a costume. Maybe they're not creative to create one or have resources. So being able to actually listen to young people and hold what they're saying as their truth, because it's their story, it's their situation. Even though a lot of times when I was younger, people would say to me, "You're only 15 years old. What are you sad about? You don't pay bills, right? Like you're not stressed." And it's like, actually, I am stressed, right? School is hard. Going through puberty is challenging, right? So being able to validate that they have experiences, they're navigating systems, and if they're old enough to navigate a system, they're old enough to talk about what they're experiencing. They're old enough to figure out language. And I know as an advocate, I feel as though it's my job to provide that level of coaching because those skills will translate into a job 10 years from now. So that's what came in mind to me, like partners, like young people are partners, not just seat warmers at the table. You should work with us the same way you work with your colleague or coworker.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. And it's a conversation that I hear from survivors every single day. It's exactly that. People question why they're being invited to something, or they wonder, is this, you're taking information from me. What will you do with it? How does this benefit me, my community? Will it improve services? What's the upside to my participation? It's really important and something survivors ask a lot. Grateful to be present and grateful to be asked, but also what else? Like what will we give back? I wanted to actually just pose a question for any of you to respond to, and it's really around a lot of times when survivors are asked to participate or invited to participate in something, there is there's either not diversity amongst the group, or there's one person that's asked to speak for an entire community. Anyone want to address any of that? Talk about inclusion.
I guess I'll go.
Yeah, please.
So it frustrates me when I'm expected to be the youth voice for all Black and Brown youth, right? So for me, it's frustrating because I can only represent my experience. So with the benefit of having a statewide network of young people, I can now create an opportunity. Like, well, actually, there's a young person in Buffalo that I think you should connect with that would be great for this, because that represents their lived experience or even their expertise in a particular area. I try to stay away from being tokenized or just sitting at the table for decoration or inviting other young people just to sit there for decoration. I find it to be difficult when people are looking for individuals, let's say for panel discussions that have juvenile justice involvement or involvement around substance use. And they choose any young person who identifies as a peer, right? And when I say they, like whoever the leader is or the organizer, and that shows this lack of respect for my experience, especially if you're going to be speaking about intimate partner violence and you want a young person who's a peer within this realm, but then you go find a young person who you already have a pre-existing relationship with because it's easy, right? As opposed to putting in the actual work, engaging in collective impact strategies and engaging with other organizations and going outside to actually find people who fit this description in order for the event to be successful. So for me, it upsets me, I'll be honest, but I'm also really good at redirecting and also knowing which young person would be a great young person for a particular opportunity.
Thank you. Maria, do you want to speak to some of this, or is there something else that's on your mind?
I was thinking about our promotoras cohort. You know, every year we get different promotoras invited to participate in these programs because we do want to expose other people, you know, other people's experiences, other people's way of doing things, a way that they can present, that they can share information with other people and ideas. I mean, that youth leaders, it's you know, it's also an inspiration because we're hearing what they're saying. We're coming from different generations, different, you know, thoughts and experiences. So hearing them sometimes it opens our eyes where we think, oh, you know, I know how we do this, how we're supposed to do this. But when we hear the people are like, oh, you know, that's why we have this program, because we want to just, you know, hear what other ideas, what other just experiences and things can work for other people. So just, you know, having different people and just engaging with more and more people, I think it's just more powerful to and more effective, you know, for our community.
Thank you so much. Isela, if someone were going to start a program that it was engaging survivors more, recognizing survivor skills and strengths, recognizing that many of us who do advocacy work are survivors and have this experience, what would you say to programs that are thinking about starting something new?
Just go from the bottom. I believe that starting with kids, it's better because we can change the future of our community. I was actually thinking about that the other day. We should, when we can offer more programs for maternity people and clinics, and we can go teach them how to be a better parent, you know, how to like treat the kids at home so they can become better citizens, and listen to the people, to their specific needs. We can always try to create these great programs, but if you don't listen, what are the resources that our community needs? I think that's so important.
Yeah, thank you. So earlier in our conversation, I think it was Maria who talked about that our journey is often this up and down, you know, that it's not this straight line and everything lines up really nicely. And one of the things that I know that programs sometimes are concerned about is, what if, as a survivor engaged now on behalf of the organization, representing the organization, I say something, I say the wrong thing, or I talk about my own experience in a way that is uncomfortable for folks. And something that I've always said in response to that is survivors are doing this work and have been doing this work from the beginning. So rather than starting in a place where that isn't real, but to start in a place that is real with, we have experience, we all have growing and learning to do, even those of us who've been doing this work for a long time. And that in this movement, survivors are the core of what we do. And it's in part why we wanted to talk about honoring survivors and advocates today. So I wondered if each of you had a last word for us as we wrap up our conversation for today in terms of, what is truly honoring of survivors and advocates and of the work and experience that we have. And so, Estella, can we start with you this time?
I feel that every person has to believe in change, and there's something better out there. Just being that role model for everyone around you and believe in change. Work hard on yourself because everyone, like in your house especially, is watching you. You can make a huge difference if you wanted to make a change, and believe in that.
Thank you so much. Tiara, last words from you?
So honoring survivors and advocates. You got me stumped, Cathy, and I'm very rarely stumped because I'm thinking about how would I want to be honored and how do I honor those that even came before me, right? What I think about is legacy and remembering that there was someone out there fighting for our voices to be heard and for us to keep that fight up, whether that's in a macro level advocacy when it comes to policy and how we're doing programming, or if that's on a micro level when it's sitting down talking with a participant or even a young person or even another provider, right? So thinking about just keeping hope alive, keeping faith alive, because sometimes hope is not present, right? So for me as a survivor, keeping hope alive, right? So that's what comes to mind, Cathy.
Okay, well, thank you. And Maria, last but not least, what are your thoughts for us?
My thoughts are, I was thinking that this work is hard. Being in this field for so long, it's very rewarding, but it's also very it's heavy. So for me, it's honoring yourself. Take care of yourself. Take time to reflect, to live the present, to keep hope. As Tiara said, make plans. Do it with balance and joy. I learned that not long ago, which was hard. It's very hard to do the best that you can, do your keep with your personal life, take care of yourself, but then also do it with joy because you are part of something greater than you, by being there for people, for the youth, for the survivors, for the purpose where you're at, but put yourself first, because if we don't have you, then we won't have your services. So honoring that and honoring every contact that you have with the people that you're serving with, I think it's very important to realize that not always, there's a goal to reach, but it's also, just every interaction that you have and everything that you do is valuable. So thank you, Miss Cathy.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, Tiara and Maria and Estella. Thank you for being brave in this space and part of our learning, part of our journey, part of our education. And Carla, I just want to come back to you to see if there was anything you need to say to close us out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cathy. What a wonderful session. Thank you to our panelists, our interpreters, and our NCDVTMH team. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. Please go ahead and click on the link that I've just shared in the chat. It's our survey for today, and just let us know how we did. And within a week, like I've been saying in the chat, you'll get a follow-up with the recording, the evaluation, and a certificate of attendance. And again, I wish everyone a very good afternoon, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for supporting the environment and the conversation. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much.